Hey everyone, this is Barewire for runatonce.com. Today I'm taking a bit of a break from the theory videos I've been working on to capture a live session. It's been a 2.5 heads-up Zoom running for quite a while with a weak player who just joined the 5-10 game. So hopefully the action stays around for a while. At least long enough to get a good video in. It's been a while since I did a live recording. This player right here, Chanel, is the one in question. So the thing I know from the few hands that I watched in the other pool are that this player is 3-betting too much and is 3-betting small. So I think the best way for me to counter this is to up my 4-bet frequency. Especially with hands like this, I don't want him to realize equity for cheap. So I'm going to get into more of these situations, I think, where we're going to play with a really small SPR. I don't, unfortunately, really have any strong post-flop reads on this player, but I do have that pre-flop read from the hands that I watched in the replayer. Table 1, I think, pretty good spot to bluff turn. River. It's actually an interesting spot against Chanel. I do think I'm going to check. I might bluff catch here. On the club, I'll just hope to win the pot. It's a good result. Good to see, like, just from that showdown. I'm sorry about the big screen here. Good to see just from this showdown that he played the flop passively with a hand like that. Because I would expect from the type of player who 3-bets a lot and calls 4-bets, well, I don't know if he calls 4-bets a lot. That was a really strong hand. But I would expect in general to see more fast playing with that SPR on the obviously a weird hand. So I think when villain can't have any 3s, I'm just going to start with a check call on the flop. When I have a single 3, I'm going to check raise flop a lot. Against this villain, I'm in kind of a weird spot. I have sort of a negative blocker here. Although I think the king is a pretty good card as well for him to bluff with. I think I am going to call here. So against this turn sizing, I think it's safe to assume that King X is not a major part of villain's range. So we're going to continue to trap. The King River does make this kind of strange, because now I'm extremely likely to have rivered top full house. So I think what I'm going to do here is just make like a weird block bet. I'm just assuming that villain doesn't have a king here. If he does, he might have king 10 and shove. But there's a chance he has pocket 10s or a rivered flush, and those hands are always going to check back. So it's just a really bad river card for me in that spot, unfortunately. A real action killer. Yeah, this queen 7, I mean, it doesn't feel like on a 4 straight run out I could see it not seeming super necessary to make calls like this. I think it's actually kind of close because of all the single heart hands that are going to be in my range that are like easy folds on the river. This ace 8, I'm going to check call. So now that, well, actually, with the sizing that Chanel was using for 3-betting, I'm not concerned about scaling down my sizing. He was going quite small in the 3-bet, so the short stack is not a huge concern. I think here we're just gonna mostly run bluffs. We have enough equity if he decides to do anything aggressive. But yeah, like just because of how wide preflop ranges are, we're gonna have random like 9x with hearts, queen x with no hearts, and those are all hands that fold river pretty much every time. I'm not going to raise turn here just because there is that risk. Like the 3 is quite blank. We might be up against like a king that feels good about this safe turn. We don't want to run the risk of getting blown off our equity. I think especially when villain's like playing quite loose and splashy, and there's a chance that the session can go like really sour when you win a run at once hand that maybe frustrates them or gets them playing a little bit worse after the fact. I think there's some EV in that doesn't always get taken advantage of. So with this 9, like 9 plus backdoor plus gut shot against what's likely an automatic c-bet from him, I think I am going to raise. It's obviously not ideal if we get jammed on, but we do just go with it. I think it's important enough, like when we block his good hands so well, we block pocket 9s and 8-7, which are extremely likely nut hands. This is kind of an interesting one. I think I'm going to try a small raise here. It's not the worst thing in the world if we get floated by like the same kind of hand, but I think it's just a valuable protection play when villain's quite likely to just be stabbing with like pure air. I would mix between check raising and check calling there. But I think I have a slight preference for check call. And the pocket 4s are kind of a one and done float on most turn cards. 4 diamond run out is sort of interesting. I don't think my hand works as a bluff. I think it's just a check fold. And the 10-9 here, it's just kind of one of those like really unfortunate peel situations, I think. I think check raising is extremely ineffective at what it's trying to do, and I don't think the 5 is good enough for me to lead. It's just like we have like a shred of showdown value here when he gives up like the same hand, like when he checks behind 10-9 or something. But check raising turn with 10-9 here is extremely ineffective for what we're trying to accomplish. Like anytime that he has a better draw than us, it's a strong enough draw to peel check raises. And anytime he has a value hand, it's going to be like quite strong because of the flush card coming in. So it's going to be thinking like, oh, I'm gonna bet like this strength of value hand that can stand check raises. There's going to be some hands that don't fit into one of those two categories. We will occasionally get folds, of course, but I think like the money we save against all those bad check raises makes it a lot better to just call. So just because like I don't know how active Chanel still is in this exact moment, just going to flat the king jack. Like based on how I saw him playing at some point earlier, I would have considered 4-betting pre, but I think that's a little out of line at this stage. Kind of an annoying line here to deal with. I'm not going to entertain a call with like that light of a hand in that moment. So I do block the 7, but obviously the strategy there is to kind of force us to make some extremely light calls and probably just tending to be a block bet with something like 4x, pocket 5s, something like that. 10-7, sometimes a 4-bet for me, but 140, 145 big blinds deep. I have a slight preference for calling. Flop c-bet on this board should be fairly effective of all the spots that, like this player doesn't do a ton of folding, but of all the spots, that's a pretty good one. People just have like literal no equity a little bit too often. This 10-7 I think is kind of marginal to raise on flop. There's a lot of money behind here, and a lot of my equity depends on like getting the good run out that I need. So I think and like I don't block straights, I don't block pocket 9s. 10-9 suited is quite possible. I think it just works a little bit better as like protect your call down range and psi call when he decides to blast it off. Hopefully he has 6-5 or like, I don't know, ace jack or something. It's like not a thrilling spot, but there's the slight benefit there as well. Like I think if I do something like shove turn, for example, I think he finds a fold with hands like this. But when the board runs out super clean, like it just did, when it runs out really clean, he has incentive to shove hands like this for value. I'm kind of iffy on the turn bet, to be honest, but it might be fine. 3-bet sevens here and get like a pretty weird flop. I do think we do a lot of betting on this flop, but I think there's a pretty strong preference towards having like a jack or a 10 in my hand somewhere to make those bets. And I think that sevens just has like a lot of reason to try and check down. Especially like from an exploitative standpoint where I might just show down good against 6s, 5s, 4s. Kind of an interesting river. But this is really not the kind of hand that I want to think about bluff catching with. If I have like 9-8 here, it's like a weak hand that could think about check calling. I think the ace-9, I'm just going to look him up.